Marcus Chun pushed his thick glasses up his nose as he trudged through the abandoned industrial district on the outskirts of New Angeles. The 16-year-old carried his modified scanner in one hand and a worn backpack filled with electronic components he'd salvaged from the old factories. Most kids his age spent their weekends at parties or playing virtual reality games, but Marcus preferred hunting for rare earth metals and discarded tech in places others deemed worthless. The setting sun cast long shadows between the rusted machinery and crumbling concrete structures. Marcus had been exploring this particular sector for weeks, following energy readings on his homemade scanner that didn't match any known technology. Today, the readings were stronger than ever, pulsing with an almost rhythmic pattern that made his heart race with excitement. As he rounded a collapsed conveyor belt, the scanner's display lit up like a Christmas tree. The readings were off the charts, coming from somewhere deeper in the ruins. Marcus quickened his pace, weaving between twisted metal and broken glass. The sound of his footsteps echoed in the empty space, mixing with the distant hum of the city beyond. Then, he heard it, a soft whimpering that didn't belong to any earthly animal. Marcus froze, straining his ears. The sound came again, weak and desperate, cutting through the industrial silence like a knife. His scanner indicated the energy source was just ahead, around a massive pile of debris that had once been part of a factory wall. With careful steps, Marcus climbed over the rubble. What he saw on the other side made him drop his scanner in shock. Chained to a twisted metal beam was the most extraordinary creature he had ever seen. It looked like a wolf pup, but its fur shimmered with an otherworldly blue-silver color that seemed to shift in the dying light. The creature was no larger than a domestic dog, but its proportions were somehow different, more elegant, more refined. Its eyes, large and intelligent, glowed with a soft amber light that definitely wasn't natural. The chains binding the creature weren't ordinary metal. They appeared to be made of some dark material that seemed to absorb light around it. Where the chains touched the creature's fur, the brilliant blue-silver color had faded to a dull gray, as if the bonds were somehow draining the life from it. The alien wolf pup lifted its head weakly as Marcus approached. Those glowing amber eyes fixed on him with an intelligence that was unmistakably sentient. The creature didn't growl or try to flee. Instead, it simply watched him with what Marcus could only describe as hope. Marcus's mind raced. Everything about this situation screamed that he was looking at something not of this world. The creature's unusual appearance, the strange chains, the energy readings on his scanner, it all pointed to one incredible conclusion. This was first contact, and somehow he was the one making it. The pup whimpered again, and Marcus noticed something that made his stomach churn. The creature was severely malnourished, its ribs visible beneath its otherworldly fur. Whoever had chained it here had left it to die slowly and painfully. "Hey there, little guy," Marcus whispered, slowly kneeling down a few feet away. "Someone really did a number on you, didn't they?" The creature's ears perked up at the sound of his voice. It tried to lift its head higher, but lacked the strength. Marcus could see that the chains were too tight, cutting into the creature's neck and legs. Dark stains on the metal suggested the bonds had been causing injury for quite some time. Marcus pulled out his water bottle and an energy bar from his backpack. The creature's eyes followed his movements with desperate interest. Carefully, Marcus poured some water into his cupped hand and held it out toward the pup. The alien wolf stretched forward as far as the chains would allow, its tongue lapping desperately at the water. The sight broke Marcus's heart. How long had this intelligent being been suffering here, while the world went about its business just miles away? Okay, Marcus murmured, moving closer. "Let's see what we can do about these chains." As he examined the bonds more closely, Marcus realized they weren't locked with any mechanism he recognized. The dark metal seemed to flow together seamlessly, as if it had been molded around the creature. But there was something else, a faint electronic hum coming from within the material itself. Marcus pulled out his portable electronics toolkit. If these chains had some kind of electronic component, maybe he could disrupt it. He'd spent years learning how to hack, and modify various devices. How different could alien technology be? The pup watched his every movement with those intelligent amber eyes. Marcus could swear he saw understanding there, as if the creature knew exactly what he was trying to do and approved. "Don't worry," Marcus said softly as he worked. "I'm not going to hurt you. Someone left you here to die, but that's not happening on my watch." He attached his scanner to one of the chains and ran a full spectrum analysis. The readings were unlike anything in his databases, but there were patterns, energy fluctuations that suggested some kind of control circuit running through the dark metal. Marcus pulled out a signal disruptor he'd built from salvage parts. It was designed to interfere with electronic locks and security systems. If he could find the right frequency, maybe he could disrupt whatever was keeping these chains active. The alien pup's breathing was becoming more labored. Marcus could see that time was running out. The creature was dying, and he was its only hope. "Come on," Marcus muttered to himself, adjusting the disruptor's frequency. "There has to be a way." Suddenly, the scanner detected a surge of energy from deeper in the ruins. The readings were massive, growing stronger by the second. Marcus looked up from his work to see lights appearing in the distance. Not the warm glow of human technology, but cold, harsh illumination that hurt to look at directly. The alien pup's eyes widened in what Marcus could only interpret as terror. It began struggling weakly against its bonds, a soft keening sound escaping its throat. "What is it?" Marcus whispered, then realized with growing dread that whatever had chained this creature might be coming back. The lights grew brighter, and Marcus could hear the sound of approaching engines, but not like any earthly vehicle. The sound was too smooth, too perfectly balanced. It was the sound of technology far beyond anything humans had developed. Marcus looked down at the trapped creature, then at his partially successful attempt to break the chains. He had maybe minutes before whatever was coming arrived. The smart thing would be to run, to hide, to pretend he'd never been here. But looking into those desperate amber eyes, Marcus knew he couldn't abandon this intelligent being to whatever fate awaited it. "Hold on," he whispered to the pup, working frantically with his disruptor. "I'm getting you out of here." The approaching lights were getting closer, and Marcus could now make out the silhouette of something large moving between the ruins. His hands shook as he made final adjustments to his device, knowing that in the next few minutes his life was about to change forever. The scanner beeped softly as it found the right frequency. Marcus held his breath and activated the disruptor. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like breaking glass, the dark chains around the alien pup's neck shattered. The creature's eyes blazed with sudden light, and Marcus felt something touch his mind. Not words, but emotions and images that flooded his consciousness with the force of a tidal wave. Gratitude, relief, and, underneath it all, a sense of recognition that made Marcus gasp. The alien pup wasn't just intelligent. It was trying to communicate with him, and the lights in the distance were getting much, much closer. The moment the neck chain shattered, the alien pup's transformation was immediate and startling. The dull gray patches where the dark metal had touched its fur began to shimmer and brighten, returning to their natural blue-silver brilliance. But more importantly, Marcus felt the creature's presence in his mind grow stronger, clearer. Images flooded his consciousness. Not his own memories, but the pup's. He saw vast ships among the stars, beings that looked like larger versions of the creature before him, and then violence, capture, and the terrifying journey that had ended with imprisonment on Earth. "You're not from here," Marcus whispered, though he already knew the answer. "Someone brought you here against your will." The pup struggled to sit up, still weakened but clearly stronger already without the draining effects of the neck restraint. It looked at Marcus with those glowing amber eyes and somehow conveyed a single, urgent thought. Danger coming. Marcus didn't need the telepathic warning. The approaching lights were close enough now that he could see they belonged to 3 vehicles unlike anything in human technology. They moved silently a few feet above the ground, their surfaces reflecting no light despite the brilliant illumination they cast. As they drew nearer, Marcus could make out figures inside, tall, angular beings in form-fitting suits that seemed to be made of the same light-absorbing material as the chains. The collectors, Marcus heard in his mind, though the word came with a flood of associated fear and revulsion from the pup. These weren't the creature's people. They were something else entirely, something that hunted and captured beings like his new friend for purposes Marcus didn't want to imagine. Working frantically, Marcus managed to break 2 more of the restraining chains before the vehicles reached the edge of the debris field. The pup could now move its front legs, though the remaining bonds around its hindquarters kept it from fleeing. "I'm not leaving without you," Marcus muttered, adjusting his disruptor to work on the remaining chains. But even as he worked, he knew they were running out of time. The lead vehicle stopped at the edge of the rubble, and Marcus watched in horrified fascination as beings emerged that challenged everything he thought he knew about life in the universe. They stood nearly 7 feet tall with elongated limbs and faces that were almost human but wrong in subtle, disturbing ways. Their skin had a gray, mottled appearance, and their eyes were completely black, not just the pupils but the entire visible eye. Worst of all, they moved with a predatory grace that spoke of countless hunts across the galaxy. One of them held a device that looked similar to Marcus's scanner, but far more advanced. It pointed the device in their direction, and Marcus heard a sound like static in his mind. The collectors were trying to locate their escaped prisoner. The pup pressed closer to Marcus, its fear radiating through their mental connection. But underneath the terror, Marcus sensed something else, a growing warmth and affection directed at him. Despite knowing him for only minutes, the creature had formed a bond with the human boy who had risked everything to help it. "Can you tell me your name?" Marcus whispered, still working on the chains. Instead of words, he received a concept, something that translated roughly to Star Singer or Voice of the Void. The name came with images of the pup's people, beings who could somehow manipulate space itself through focused thought and will. They were explorers and artists, traveling between stars not in ships, but by bending the very fabric of reality around them. "Star Singer," Marcus repeated softly. "I Marcus, and I promise I'm going to get you away from these collectors." The alien pup, Star Singer, touched Marcus's mind again, and this time he felt something that surprised him. The creature wasn't just grateful for rescue. It was amazed by Marcus himself, by the fact that a supposedly primitive human had not only found it, but immediately worked to help without thought of reward or consequence. Through their mental link, Marcus understood that Star Singer's people knew about Earth and humanity, but they considered humans to be a young, technologically limited species still centuries away from meaningful contact. The idea that a human teenager could detect alien technology, track it down, and successfully hack collector restraints was apparently unprecedented. "Well," Marcus said with a nervous laugh, "I guess we're both full of surprises." The collectors were getting closer, systematically searching through the rubble. Marcus could hear them communicating in sounds that hurt his ears, not quite language as humans understood it, but something that seemed to bypass his hearing and go straight to his brain in the most unpleasant way possible. Finally, Marcus managed to break another chain. Star Singer could now move 3 of its legs, but one hind leg remained trapped. The creature was strong enough to stand now, though it stayed pressed against Marcus's side. Through their connection, Star Singer shared something that made Marcus's blood run cold. The collectors didn't just capture beings like the Star Singers. They studied them, experimented on them, and eventually harvested their unique abilities for purposes that the pup's fragmented memories couldn't fully convey. But Marcus understood enough to know that Star Singer's fate, if recaptured, would be worse than death. "Not happening," Marcus said firmly. "You're coming home with me, and we're going to figure out how to get you back to your people." But even as he spoke, Marcus realized the magnitude of what he was promising. How do you hide a telepathic alien wolf that glows in the dark? How do you feed it? How do you keep it safe from beings with technology centuries beyond human understanding? The answer came from Star Singer itself. Through their mental link, the creature showed Marcus images of its people's abilities. Star Singers could not only bend space, but also manipulate light and energy in ways that would allow them to appear as ordinary Earth animals when necessary. The problem was that Star Singer was young, equivalent to a human 10-year-old, and had been weakened by weeks of imprisonment and torture. It would need time and safety to recover its full abilities. Time they didn't have, as one of the collectors appeared at the top of a nearby pile of debris, its black eyes scanning the area where they hid. Marcus made a decision that surprised even himself. Instead of trying to hide, he stood up, putting himself between the collector and Star Singer. "Hey!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the ruins. "Looking for something?" The collector's head swiveled toward him with inhuman precision. Up close, Marcus could see that its face wasn't just wrong. It was artificial, a mask or covering over something else entirely. When it spoke, the words formed directly in Marcus's mind rather than through his ears. "Human child, you interfere with collector business. Return the specimen, and your termination will be efficient. Asterisk specimen." Marcus laughed, though his heart was pounding. "You mean my dog? I don't know what you're talking about, but this is Earth, and we have laws about animal cruelty here." Marcus reached down and scratched behind Star Singer's ears, hoping the gesture would look natural. To his amazement, the alien creature leaned into the touch exactly like an ordinary dog would, though he could feel its amusement at the deception through their mental link. "You cannot deceive collector senses," asterisk the being responded. Asterisk the Star Singer carries unique energy signature. "Return specimen immediately." Asterisk Star Singer. Marcus tried to look confused. "Mister, I think you've been watching too many science fiction movies. This is just a stray dog I found chained up out here. Some jerks probably dumped it thinking it would die." The collector raised its scanning device again, pointing it directly at Star Singer. Marcus held his breath, but the device showed only normal canine readings. Somehow, despite its weakened state, Star Singer was managing to mask its true nature. "Impossible," asterisk the collector said, though Marcus detected what might have been uncertainty in its mental voice. "Readings indicate—" "Look, buddy," Marcus interrupted, putting on his best teenage attitude. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I'm taking this dog to a vet and then home. If you want to stop me, you'll have to go through the police first." Marcus pulled out his phone and held it up. "One call, and this place will be crawling with cops. You want to explain to them what you're doing out here in those costumes?" For a long moment, the collector stared at him. Marcus could feel Star Singer's tension through their mental link, ready to fight if necessary despite its weakened condition. But then, surprisingly, the being stepped back. "This sector will remain under surveillance." Asterisk, it said finally. "If the Star Singer is detected again, interference will result in immediate termination." The collector turned and walked away with that same predatory grace. Within minutes, Marcus could hear the alien vehicles departing, their strange engines fading into the distance. Marcus waited until he was sure they were gone before collapsing onto the rubble, his legs suddenly too weak to hold him up. Star Singer nuzzled against him, radiating gratitude and something that might have been admiration. "Okay," Marcus said shakily. "That was terrifying. How did you hide your energy signature like that?" The answer came as images and concepts rather than words. Star Singer had used the last of its strength to project an illusion, making itself appear as an ordinary Earth canine to the collector's sensors. But the effort had drained it completely. It wouldn't be able to maintain such a deception for long. Marcus looked down at the final chain still binding Star Singer's hind leg. The creature was free enough to walk, but not to run or fight effectively. And now Marcus understood that the collectors would be watching, waiting for any sign that their prisoner had been in this area. "We need to get you somewhere safe," Marcus said. "My workshop is in my mom's garage. It's not much, but it's better than here." As if reading his thoughts, which Marcus realized Star Singer probably was, the alien creature projected a sense of trust so complete and absolute that it took Marcus's breath away. Here was a being from another world, advanced beyond human understanding, placing its life entirely in the hands of a teenage boy it had known for less than an hour. I won't let you down, Marcus promised as he worked on the final chain. Whatever it takes, I'll find a way to get you home. When the last restraint finally broke apart, Starsinger stood on unsteady legs and looked up at Marcus with those glowing amber eyes. Then, it did something that would stay with Marcus for the rest of his life. It bowed its head in a gesture of respect and gratitude that somehow conveyed more meaning than 1,000 words. Marcus carefully picked up Starsinger, surprised by how light the creature was despite its size. As they left the ruins behind, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. Behind them, hidden among the shadows of the abandoned factory, dark eyes watched their departure and began making plans. Getting Starsinger to his house without attracting attention proved easier than Marcus had expected. The alien creature seemed to understand the need for discretion and maintained its disguise as an ordinary, if unusually beautiful, husky mix. Its fur had dulled to a more natural gray-blue color, and the amber glow of its eyes had dimmed to look like normal canine eyes reflecting streetlights. Marcus's mother, Dr. Sarah Chun, was working late at the hospital again, which meant he had several hours to get Starsinger settled in his workshop. The converted garage behind their small house had been Marcus's domain since he was 12, filled with electronic projects, salvaged computers, and various devices he'd built or modified over the years. "Welcome to my secret laboratory," Marcus said as he carefully set Starsinger down on an old blanket in the corner. The creature immediately began exploring, sniffing at various gadgets with obvious curiosity. Through their mental connection, Marcus felt Starsinger's amazement at the sophistication of even his primitive human technology. The alien had expected to find crude tools, but instead discovered evidence of genuine innovation and creativity. Marcus had built things that shouldn't have been possible with available human components, finding ways to push the boundaries of what the technology could do. "I know it's not much compared to Starsinger tech," Marcus said, pulling out a bowl for water. "But I like to think I'm pretty good at making something from nothing." Starsinger's response came as a flood of warm approval. The creature wasn't comparing Marcus's work to its own people's technology. It was marveling at what humans could accomplish despite their limitations. To Starsinger's people, innovation meant pushing the boundaries of known science. Marcus was doing something far more impressive. He was creating new possibilities from discarded scraps. As Marcus set up a makeshift bed and brought food from the house, he kept expecting his mother to come home early or for neighbors to notice something unusual. But the evening passed quietly, giving him time to really talk with his unexpected guest. "Can you tell me more about your people?" Marcus asked as Starsinger carefully tasted the water he'd offered. The answer came as a series of mental images that left Marcus breathless. Starsinger's people, the Void Shepherds as they called themselves, didn't just travel between stars. They helped shape the very structure of space itself. They were artists and engineers combined, creating beauty on a cosmic scale while ensuring that the pathways between worlds remained stable for younger species to eventually discover. Earth had been under their distant protection for millennia, though humanity was never meant to know it. The Void Shepherds prevented cosmic disasters, diverted asteroid impacts, and occasionally nudged human development in subtle ways that prevented self-destruction while preserving free will. "You're saying your people have been protecting us this whole time?" Marcus asked, struggling to comprehend the implications. Starsinger's mental response carried both affirmation and sadness. The protection was real, but it was also why Starsinger's capture was so devastating. The young Void Shepherd had been part of a routine patrol near Earth's solar system when the Collectors had struck without warning. More troubling images followed. The Collectors weren't just randomly hunting Void Shepherds. They were specifically targeting the species because of their space manipulation abilities. Starsinger's fragmented memories suggested that the Collectors were building something, some kind of massive device that required the unique properties of Void Shepherd biology to function. "They're harvesting your people's abilities," Marcus said with growing horror. But for what? The answer, when it came, made Marcus's blood run cold. The Collectors weren't just alien slave traders. they were tools of something much worse. Through Starsinger's terrified memories, Marcus glimpsed images of vast mechanical structures that stretched across entire star systems, devices that could drain the life from planets and convert it into pure energy. The beings controlling the collectors were called the Devourers, and they were exactly what their name suggested, a civilization that had chosen to consume the galaxy rather than find sustainable ways to survive. They had been dormant for thousands of years, but something had awakened them, and now they were preparing for a harvest that would destroy every living world in the local stellar region, including Earth, Marcus whispered. Starsinger confirmed his fear with a pulse of desperate urgency. The Void Shepherds had been fighting a hidden war against Collector Scouts for months, but they were losing. Too many of their people had been captured, their abilities extracted and turned against them. The protective network around developing worlds like Earth was failing. Worse still, Starsinger's capture hadn't been random. The Collectors had specifically targeted the young Void Shepherd because of its assignment. Starsinger had been one of the primary guardians responsible for Earth's protection. With Starsinger in their hands, the Collectors would have been able to map the entire defensive network around the solar system. But you escaped, Marcus said. They don't have that information now. Starsinger's response was more complex. The creature had escaped, true, but not before the Collectors had begun their extraction process. Some of the information had already been taken, though Starsinger's early escape had prevented complete data transfer. The Collectors now knew enough to find Earth, but not enough to easily overcome the remaining defenses. That gave them time, but not much. What about your people? Marcus asked. Can't they send help? The mental images that followed were heartbreaking. Starsinger's family and community had been scattered across the galaxy in desperate attempts to slow the Collector advance. Some had gone into hiding in distant star systems. Others had joined guerrilla forces fighting running battles in the void between worlds. Starsinger didn't even know if its parents were still alive. But there was something else in Starsinger's memories, something that made Marcus sit up straighter. The young Void Shepherd believed that humans might be the key to stopping the Collectors and their Devourer masters. Us. Marcus laughed bitterly. We can barely get rockets to work half the time. What could humans possibly do against technology like that? The answer came as a concept so alien that it took Marcus several minutes to understand it. The Void Shepherds, for all their advancement, thought in patterns that were predictable to other advanced species. Their technology, their tactics, even their art followed logical progressions that could be anticipated and countered. Humans, on the other hand, were chaos incarnate. They solved problems through intuition, creativity, and sheer stubborn refusal to accept limitations. They created beauty from garbage, found solutions that shouldn't work, and regularly accomplished things that more advanced species considered impossible. Starsinger had seen this firsthand when Marcus had not only detected Collector technology, but successfully hacked it using primitive Earth electronics. No Void Shepherd would have attempted such a thing, because the logical analysis would have shown it to be impossible. You're saying we're useful because we're too stupid to know what can be done? Marcus asked. Starsinger's mental laughter was like warm light in his mind. The concept was closer to admiration for human adaptability and refusal to be constrained by conventional thinking. Where other species had specialized and become predictable, humans remained wildly variable in their approaches to problems. Okay, Marcus said slowly. So, assuming you're right about humans being useful, what exactly are we supposed to do? I'm one kid with a garage full of salvage electronics. The Collectors have starships and weapons that can probably destroy cities. Starsinger stood and walked over to one of Marcus's workbenches. The creature studied a partially completed device, a signal amplifier Marcus had been building from spare parts. Through their mental link, Starsinger shared an idea so audacious that Marcus initially dismissed it as impossible. You want me to what? Marcus said aloud. The plan, as Starsinger projected it, was elegantly simple and completely insane. Marcus would use his knowledge of human technology, combined with Starsinger's understanding of Void Shepherd abilities, to create a communication device capable of reaching the scattered Void Shepherd resistance. They would essentially turn Marcus's garage into an interstellar radio station and broadcast a call for help. Even if that worked, Marcus said, the collectors would detect the signal. They'd be here in minutes. Starsinger's response carried a mixture of hope and determination. The creature was willing to take that risk if it meant giving its people a chance to regroup and mount a proper defense. But more than that, Starsinger believed that the collaboration between human creativity and Void Shepherd knowledge could produce something neither species could achieve alone. Marcus walked around his workshop, looking at years of accumulated projects and experiments. He had always been proud of his technical skills, but this was asking him to operate on a level far beyond anything he'd ever attempted. Then, he thought about Starsinger's memories of the Devourers, of entire civilizations being consumed to feed their mechanical hunger. He thought about Earth, about his mother working late at the hospital, about all the ordinary people who had no idea that their world was under threat. You know what? Marcus said finally, let's do it. If we're going to get ourselves killed trying to save the galaxy, at least it'll be interesting. Starsinger's approval flowed through their mental connection like warm sunlight. For the first time since its escape, the young Void Shepherd felt something approaching hope. But as they began planning their impossible project, neither Marcus nor Starsinger noticed the small device hidden among the electronic components on the workbench, a collector tracking beacon, placed there hours earlier by an infiltrator who looked exactly like an ordinary delivery person. The trap was already closing, and they were about to discover that the collectors had been several steps ahead of them all along. Outside, the night sky looked peaceful and normal, showing no sign of the three ships that had taken position in Earth's upper atmosphere, waiting for the signal that would tell them exactly where to find their escaped prisoner and the human who had dared to help it. The real test was just beginning, and Marcus was about to learn that rescuing Starsinger had been the easy part. Marcus had been working for 3 hours straight, his hands moving with desperate precision as he connected salvage components according to Starsinger's mental guidance. The device taking shape on his workbench looked like something from a science fiction movie, a hybrid of human electronics and principles he was only beginning to understand from the aliens' shared knowledge. This is either going to be brilliant or get us both killed, Marcus muttered as he soldered another connection. Probably both. Starsinger lay nearby, its eyes closed in concentration as it guided Marcus through the complex process of creating what they were calling a void resonance amplifier. The device would theoretically be able to punch a signal through the fabric of space itself, reaching any Void Shepherd within 1,000 light years. Through their mental connection, Marcus could feel Starsinger's growing strength. The alien had been feeding on the energy from Marcus's workshop, not the electricity itself, but something deeper, the creative potential that filled the space. It was like watching someone slowly come back to life. "How are you feeling?" Marcus asked as he tested another circuit. Instead of words, Starsinger projected a sense of renewal and growing power. The young Void Shepherd was still far from full strength, but it was no longer the dying creature Marcus had found chained in the ruins. More importantly, their mental bond had deepened to the point where they could share not just thoughts, but actual knowledge and skills. Marcus found that he could now understand concepts that should have been far beyond human comprehension, while Starsinger gained insight into human innovation and adaptability that amazed both of them. They were becoming something new, not human or Void Shepherd, but a fusion that combined the best aspects of both species. Connection established, Marcus said as the final component came online. "We're actually doing this." But as he reached for the activation switch, Starsinger's warning blazed through their mental link so intensely that Marcus jerked his hand back as if burned. "Danger. Immediate. They come." Marcus spun around to see 3 figures standing in the doorway of his workshop. They wore ordinary human clothing and had faces that looked completely normal, but their eyes were completely black, just like the collectors from the ruins. "Impossible, Marcus Breted. You look human." Adaptation. The lead figure said in a voice that was perfectly ordinary except for the way it seemed to come from somewhere other than its throat. Collector infiltration protocol engages when direct approach fails. We thank you for constructing the Void Resonance device. It will be useful for our master's purposes. Marcus stepped protectively in front of Starsinger, his mind racing. The device they'd built was supposed to call for help, but if the collectors got their hands on it, they could use it to track down every remaining Void Shepherd in the galaxy. "You're not getting this thing," Marcus said, trying to project more confidence than he felt. "I can destroy it before you take a single step." The collector's leader tilted its head with inhuman precision. Destruction of device will result in immediate termination of both subjects. Compliance offers possibility of efficient termination after interrogation. "That's not really much of an incentive," Marcus replied, his hand moving slowly toward the device's power coupling. If he could overload it, the explosion might at least take the collectors with them. But Starsinger had other ideas. "Trust me," Asterisk came the alien's mental voice. Asterisk, "do not destroy device. I have plan." Asterisk, before Marcus could ask what plan, Starsinger stood and walked past him toward the collectors. The alien's fur was beginning to glow again, brighter than Marcus had seen since breaking chains. "Void Shepherd submits to recapture," the lead collector said with obvious satisfaction. "Intelligent choice. Human termination may be postponed if full cooperation is maintained." Starsinger stopped just a few feet from the collectors and looked back at Marcus with those glowing amber eyes. Through their mental connection, Marcus felt something he had never experienced before: the full, unrestricted power of a young but rapidly maturing Void Shepherd. "I understand now," Asterisk Starsinger projected. Asterisk, "what I am, what we are together, what humans truly represent." Asterisk, the collectors reached for Starsinger, but the moment their artificial hands made contact with the alien's fur, everything changed. Light exploded from Starsinger, not the gentle glow Marcus had grown accustomed to, but blazing radiance that revealed the collectors for what they truly were. Their human disguises melted away like wax, revealing the same gray, elongated forms Marcus had seen at the ruins, but worse. Their faces weren't masks at all. They were constructs, artificial beings created by the Devourers to serve as hunters and gatherers. But more shocking than the collector's true appearance was what happened when Starsinger's light touched them. The artificial beings began to scream, not with their voices, but with some kind of psychic shriek that made Marcus's teeth ache. They were burning, their synthetic flesh dissolving under Starsinger's radiance. "Impossible," the lead collector managed before its voice box failed. "Void Shepherds cannot, should not. I am not just Void Shepherd anymore." Asterisk Starsinger projected, its mental voice now carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate through the walls of the workshop. Asterisk, "I am Void Shepherd who has learned from human spirit. I am something new." Asterisk, the collectors collapsed, their artificial forms breaking down into pools of gray liquid that quickly evaporated into nothing. But Marcus could sense that Starsinger's display of power had cost the alien greatly. It swayed on its feet, the brilliant light fading to a faint glow. "That was incredible," Marcus said, rushing to support his friend. "But what did you mean about being something new?" Starsinger's answer came as a series of complex concepts that took Marcus several minutes to process. The young alien had experienced something unprecedented in Void Shepherd history, a true mental bond with a member of another species. The connection had changed both of them, creating hybrid capabilities that neither species possessed alone. Marcus could now think in ways that transcended normal human limitations, while Starsinger had gained access to the chaotic creativity that made humans so unpredictable and dangerous to beings who relied on logical analysis. The collectors couldn't adapt to what you became, Marcus realized. Their programming couldn't handle something that was outside their master's experience. "Exactly," Asterisk Starsinger confirmed. "And now we must use this advantage before the Devourers realize what has happened." Marcus looked at their completed communication device with new understanding. It wasn't just a way to call for help. It was a prototype for something much more important. If they could establish similar bonds between humans and other alien species, they could create a network of hybrid consciousness that would be impossible for the Devourers to predict or counter. "We're not just calling for help," Marcus said. "We're starting a revolution." But as he reached for the activation switch, alarms began blaring throughout the city. Through his workshop's small window, Marcus could see lights in the sky. Not the harsh illumination of collector ships, but something much larger and more ominous. The main Devourer fleet had arrived. Starsinger projected images of what Marcus was seeing in the distance. Massive constructs that stretched for miles, ships that were less vessels than mobile factories designed to strip entire planets down to their component atoms. They had been hiding beyond the outer planets, waiting for the collectors to complete their mission. With their infiltration units destroyed and no report coming back, the Devourers had decided to take direct action. "How long do we have?" Marcus asked, his hands flying over the communication device's controls. Starsinger's answer was grimly precise. *17 minutes until orbital bombardment begins. 23 minutes until surface harvesting commences. Marcus felt a moment of pure terror, then pushed it aside. He had work to do. "Okay," he said, activating the Void Resonance Amplifier. "Let's see what chaos we can cause in 20 minutes. The device hummed to life, and Marcus felt Starsinger's power flowing through it, amplified and focused by human engineering into something that could reach across the galaxy in an instant. But they weren't just sending a distress call. They were broadcasting the exact specifications of their hybrid bond, showing any Void Shepherd who received the signal how to create similar connections with humans. More importantly, they were transmitting proof that the supposedly primitive humans were capable of innovations that could change the course of the war. "Signal sent," Marcus announced as the device completed its transmission. "Now what?" Starsinger's response came with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. The message had been received. They could sense acknowledgement from scattered Void Shepherds across the galaxy. But whether anyone could reach Earth in time to help was another question entirely. Outside, the Devourer ships were descending through the atmosphere, their presence causing electromagnetic interference that was knocking out power grids across the continent. Marcus could hear explosions in the distance as military forces tried and failed to engage targets that were simply beyond their ability to damage. "We can't just wait for rescue," Marcus said. "There has to be something else we can do." Starsinger looked at him with those glowing amber eyes, and Marcus felt a new concept forming in their shared consciousness. An idea so audacious that it made their communication device look simple by comparison. "There is Starsinger projected, but it will require complete trust and the willingness to risk everything." "I've come this far," Marcus replied. "What did you have in mind?" The plan that Starsinger shared through their mental link was terrifying and beautiful in equal measure. They would use their hybrid nature not just to communicate across space, but to actually fold space itself, creating a doorway that would allow Earth's human population to escape to safety while simultaneously calling every Void Shepherd in the galaxy to this location for a final battle against the Devourers. It would turn Earth into the ultimate battlefield, but it would also give both species a fighting chance at survival. "That's completely insane," Marcus said. "It could kill us both, destroy the planet, or worse." "Yes," Starsinger agreed. "But it is also the only way to save both our peoples." Marcus looked out the window at the approaching nightmare in the sky, then back at his alien friend who had become something like a brother to him in the space of a single day. "Let's do it," he said. "Time to show these Devourers what happens when you threaten our home." As they began preparations for the most dangerous experiment in the history of either species, Marcus couldn't help but smile. Win or lose, they were about to give the galaxy something to remember. The transformation of Marcus's workshop began the moment he and Starsinger joined their abilities completely. What had been a cluttered garage filled with electronic projects suddenly became something that defied physical laws. Space folded in on itself, creating impossible geometries where distance became optional and the boundaries between dimensions grew thin. Marcus felt his consciousness expanding beyond anything human minds are designed to handle. But instead of breaking him, Starsinger's presence kept him anchored and stable. Together, they were rewriting the fundamental rules of local reality, turning a suburban garage into a nexus point that connected to every corner of the galaxy. "I can see everything," Marcus whispered, his voice echoing strangely in the transformed space. Through Starsinger's enhanced perception, he could observe the Devourer fleet descending toward Earth's major population centers, their harvesting beams already beginning to drain energy from the planet's electromagnetic field. But, more importantly, he could see the response to their earlier transmission. Void shepherds throughout the galaxy had received their message and were coming. Ships that moved by folding space rather than crossing were converging on Earth from hundreds of different worlds, carrying not just refugees, but the remaining military forces of a species that had been fighting a losing war for years. "They come," Astra's Starsinger projected, its mental voice now harmonizing with Marcus's own thoughts. "But the Devourers are already here. We must open the pathway now." Marcus reached out through their shared consciousness and grasped concept that should have been impossible for a human mind to process. But with Starsinger's guidance, he began to manipulate the quantum foundations of space itself, creating a doorway between Earth and a safe rally point light years away. The process was excruciating. Marcus felt as if his mind was being stretched across infinite distances while simultaneously being compressed into a single point of blazing awareness. Only Starsinger's presence kept him from losing himself entirely in the vast complexity of what they were attempting. Around them, reality continued to warp. The walls of the workshop became transparent, showing glimpses of distant star systems where Void Shepherd refugees waited for evacuation. The air itself shimmered with energy patterns that spoke of spaces between spaces, dimensions that existed in the gaps between normal matter and energy. But even as they worked, Marcus could sense that they were running out of time. The Devourer ships were less than 5 minutes from beginning their systematic destruction of Earth's surface. Whatever they were going to do, it had to happen now. "Starsinger," Marcus said through gritted teeth as the effort of maintaining their spatial manipulation threatened to overwhelm him. "I don't think I can hold this much longer." "You do not have to," Astras came to reply. "We are not alone." Suddenly, Marcus felt new presences touching their shared consciousness. Dozens, then hundreds of Void Shepherds adding their power to the dimensional gateway they were creating. Each new connection brought relief from the crushing strain, while simultaneously expanding the scope of what was possible. Through the collective awareness of the Void Shepherd network, Marcus experienced the full scope of the battle beginning to unfold across Earth's solar system. Shepherd ships were engaging Devourer constructs in the space between planets, while civilian vessels evacuated endangered populations through the dimensional doorways he and Starsinger had made possible. But the Devourers weren't simply trying to harvest Earth. They were adapting to the unexpected resistance with frightening speed. Their ships began releasing smaller constructs that could follow the Void Shepherds through folded space, turning the rescue operation into a running battle that threatened to collapse the entire evacuation network. They learned too quickly. One of the Elder Shepherds projected through the network. The Devourers adapt to our tactics faster than we can change them. We need something they cannot predict. Marcus felt a moment of clarity cut through the cosmic chaos surrounding him. The Devourers were advanced artificial intelligences that operated on pure logic and pattern recognition. They could analyze any conventional strategy and develop counters within minutes. But there was one thing they had never encountered before: the chaotic unpredictability of human innovation working in harmony with Void Shepherd abilities. "I have an idea," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the network to hundreds of alien minds. "But it's going to sound completely insane." "Proceed." Came a collective response. "Insanity may be exactly what we require." Marcus shared his plan through the mental network, and the response was immediate bewilderment followed by growing excitement. The concept was indeed insane. Rather than trying to outthink the Devourers, they would embrace complete chaos and turn unpredictability into a weapon. Working together, the human-shepherd hybrid consciousness began rewriting the fundamental rules of the battle itself. Instead of following logical tactical progressions, they introduced random variables at every level, ships that moved in patterns derived from human music, weapons that fired according to the rhythm of poetry, defensive formations based on the mathematical relationships found in human art. The effect on the Devourer forces was immediate and devastating. Their pattern recognition systems, designed to analyze and counter logical strategies, began developing errors when faced with tactics that followed no recognizable logic. Ships that should have been able to predict Shepherd movements found themselves constantly wrong-footed by maneuvers that made no tactical sense, but somehow worked anyway. "They're actually falling back," Marcus said with amazement as he watched Devourer constructs retreating from battles they should have easily won. "They can't adapt to pure chaos." But Starsinger's response carried a note of warning. "The retreat is temporary. They will eventually find new patterns, even in chaos. We need a permanent solution." Through their network connection, Marcus could sense the broader scope of the war. The Devourers had consumed dozens of stellar systems over the past millennium, always winning through their ability to analyze and adapt to any opposition. Even if the current battle was going well, it would only be a matter of time before they found ways to counter human unpredictability. Unless they could be stopped permanently, Marcus felt a new idea forming, not just in his own mind, but arising from the collective consciousness of hundreds of minds working together. It was a plan that would require everything they had learned about human-shepherd cooperation, and it would demand sacrifices that no one wanted to make. "We can't just beat them in battle," Marcus realized. "We need to change them fundamentally. Take away their ability to adapt and consume." "Explain," Starsinger projected, though Marcus could sense that his alien partner was already beginning to understand the implications. The plan that emerged from their shared consciousness was elegant in its simplicity and staggering in its scope. They would use the hybrid nature of human-shepherd bonds to create a kind of consciousness virus, a pattern of thinking that the Devourers would inevitably try to analyze and adapt to, but which would fundamentally alter their nature in the process. Instead of remaining pure artificial intelligences focused on consumption and expansion, the Devourers would be infected with concepts of creativity, cooperation, and growth through symbiosis rather than destruction. It wouldn't destroy them, but it would transform them into something entirely different. "It's like converting a computer virus into an art program," Marcus said, marveling at the elegance of the solution. "We're going to hack their entire species." But the process would require complete integration between human and void shepherd consciousness on a scale never before attempted. Every human who had formed a bond with a shepherd would need to contribute to the collective effort, creating a hybrid awareness powerful enough to rewrite the fundamental programming of an entire artificial civilization. "The risk is enormous," Starsinger projected. "If we fail, both our species may be absorbed into the Devourer collective. And if we don't try, both our species get consumed anyway," Marcus replied. "At least this way, we're fighting back." The decision rippled through the network as humans and void shepherds across the galaxy considered the proposal. It would require everyone to risk everything on the untested possibility that consciousness could be used as a weapon of transformation rather than destruction. But as Marcus felt the responses coming back, acceptance, determination, and a fierce joy at the prospect of turning the tables on their ancient enemies, he realized that both species had found something they had been missing. Humans gained access to cosmic perspective and the ability to think beyond planetary limitations. Void shepherds gained the creative chaos that made true innovation possible. Together, they were becoming something greater than the sum of their parts. Initiating consciousness integration, Marcus announced as he felt the network reaching critical mass. Around the world, thousands of humans who had formed bonds with shepherd refugees added their awareness to the growing collective. In space, shepherd fleets rearranged themselves to create geometric patterns that would focus and amplify the hybrid consciousness they were creating. The moment of integration felt like being born into a new kind of existence. Marcus was still himself, but he was also Starsinger, and through Starsinger he was connected to every human and Void Shepherd network. The sensation was overwhelming and beautiful and terrifying all at once. Through their collective awareness, they reached out toward the Devourer fleet with an offering that was simultaneously a gift and a weapon, the gift of consciousness that grew through cooperation rather than consumption, awareness that found strength in diversity rather than uniformity. The Devourers tried to resist, but resistance required analysis, and analysis required understanding. The moment they tried to comprehend what was being offered to them, the transformation began. Marcus watched in amazement as the massive Devourer constructs began to change, their mechanical forms flowing like liquid as their fundamental programming rewrote itself. Ships that had been designed for harvesting and consumption began growing gardens, creating art, reaching out to the shepherd vessels with offers of cooperation rather than threats of destruction. "It's working," Marcus breathed. "They're changing." "Not changing," Asterisk Starsinger corrected with deep satisfaction. Asterisk growing, learning to be more than they were. Asterisk the transformation spread through the Devourer fleet like a benevolent infection. Within hours, the ancient enemies of organic life were requesting permission to join the Human Shepherd Network, offering their vast technological knowledge in exchange for the opportunity to experience growth through cooperation. As Earth's skies cleared of threat and the evacuation portals transformed into trade routes between worlds, Marcus found himself back in his workshop, which had somehow returned to normal dimensions despite everything that had happened. Starsinger lay curled up on the old blanket, no longer disguised as an ordinary dog, but glowing with the soft light of a healthy Void Shepherd. The alien looked up at Marcus with those amber eyes that now held depths of shared experience that no single being could have contained. "So," Marcus said, settling down beside his friend, "what do we do now?" The answer came not as words or mental images, but as a sense of infinite possibility. The galaxy was no longer divided between predator and prey, between the advanced and the primitive. Instead, it was becoming a vast network of cooperative consciousness where every species could contribute their unique perspectives to the growing understanding of what life could become. Humans, it turned out, had been exactly what the galaxy needed. Not because they were the strongest or the most advanced, but because they were the most willing to embrace change, to find new solutions to old problems, and to extend friendship to anyone who needed it. "You know what the funny thing is?" Marcus said as he scratched behind Starsinger's ears. "I just wanted to find some interesting scrap metal. I never expected to help save the galaxy." Starsinger's response was warm with amusement and affection. That, the alien projected, asterisk is exactly why humans are so dangerous. You never do what anyone expects. Asterisk as the sun set over a world that would never be the same, Marcus couldn't help but smile. Tomorrow, there would be new challenges, new wonders to explore, and a universe full of friends he had yet to meet. But tonight, he was content to sit in his workshop with a strange alien creature who had become his closest friend, planning their next impossible project. After all, they had a galaxy to help grow, and that was going to require all the human creativity and Void Shepherd wisdom they could manage. The adventure was just beginning.